and welcome to Story X Story, the podcast by Maya Mada that dives deep into stories across pop culture, plus gives you advice on creating your own. It's episode 187, and I am your co-host, Nigel.
I am Tazziii, content creator and co-host.
And as always, we're bringing you interesting discussions with diverse voices, and to help us out we got two in a row, two Disney Pixar films in a row. So we're going back into the world of Pixar with content creator and cosplayer Coco. Coco, welcome to the show.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming back this season. You were with us for our discussion of Luca, where for those that listened will know that we missed the trick for that one to have Coco on to discuss Coco. So this is literally the reason why we are doing this episode, to right that wrong and make everything right with the world. So we're going to be talking about Coco with Coco. So prepare for that. You can subscribe to Story X Story wherever you get your podcast from, including Apple Podcasts and Spotify. You can also send us your feedback and questions to us in several ways. You can send us a voice message on our Spotify for Podcasters page. You can email us, studio77@mayamada.com, or you can throw your thoughts at us on social media. We are at Mayamada on It's Still Twitter, at MyMadTV on Instagram and TikTok, or at Life of a W Gamer on Instagram and TikTok, or Tazziii on Twitter. You can also join our Studio 77 Discord to be part of the MyMada community and consider becoming a Studio 77 member to support the work that we do at MyMada. So before we get into today's story discussions, let's update you with the latest from the MyMada universe. We are making progress, continue to make progress on our latest manga, Origins Against All Odds. So this is a new story we kickstarted earlier in the year, had a successful Kickstarter campaign, and are working through the progress, pulling the book together. We're now on the artwork stage. So this month we start the artwork, which is great. We've got to a good place with the script, working on pulling everything together. So Kickstarter backers, community members, and eventually people on social media will start to see images, basically. Like I said, previous episodes, it's hard to showcase scratches on paper, but the script is in a good place and we will be able to start showing the artwork as we pull the pages together. This is Origins Against All Odds, which features Tazzii's character in the MyMada universe for a reflective, hope-filled manga about pursuing your creative career goals in the face of resistance and doubters from the world around you. So hopefully this is something that resonates with anyone who's on the creative journey, whatever stage you might be on. I'm hoping that people recognize something from maybe they're remembering something, maybe they're going through something. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see the reaction. But the main thing is, like, we get the book done, we get it out and add to the stories in the MyMada universe. You can also see the previous stories, the ones that we did earlier, from the world's first manga network online. So we've got Samurai Chef, we've got Serious, Hot Lunch, all different stories, all ages stories set within our shared universe. We have the Do I Look Like a Gamer campaign still going for this year. We've done a bunch of things so far, but we've still got some to come. So this is the campaign that we do each year to promote inclusion and diversity in the video games industry, as well as showcase pathways into games for young and aspiring talent. So it is now a yearly initiative, which means a new snapshot of 40 players and makers to showcase the representation that does exist, as a way to inspire future generations of diverse talent. And it also means a new schedule of events and activities. So we've been to different places. We've been featured at different events like Comic-Con, Barclays Game Frenzy, and then we've done our own schedule of events. So we've had Games Industry Explained at King's headquarters in London. We've had the Cupcake and Gamepad Social at Samsung KX, and we've got the Friends and Family Game Design Jam to come. So the date as of recording still to be decided. So we've got the website, which will be the best place to go once we've pinned down the date, and obviously follow us on socials. This will be our single day event to introduce young and aspiring games developers to the concept of video game design. So we're getting into the fundamentals in a non-tech way. So tabletop games, dice, card, paper, things like that. Encouraging people to work as a group, so either come together in a group, so friends, family, or we can put people in groups once you arrive. So it's really about encouraging attendees to take part, teamwork, and for older family members to gain better understanding of games industry, as well as younger family members understanding what it means to make games. We're also a bit further out going to be at the Festival of the Girl, which is in October the 5th and the 6th. So it's the first weekend in October, where we'll be bringing our manga and also showcasing the Do I Look Like a Gamer campaign at the Islington Business Design Centre. So it's an event aimed at young girls aged 7 to 11, and it's all about showing them different career pathways, different industries, just exposing them to different things they can get involved with. So we'll be bringing that games representation as well as our manga and doing some fun activities there. And yeah, we'll have more event announcements to come. So stay tuned for that on the campaign and other things we do over the rest of the year. So thank you to Rocksteady Studios for their sponsorship of the campaign for another year. So their support is really instrumental in allowing us to bring this vision to life and making sure we can help highlight the diverse roles of people that exist in games today. And their commitment has definitely played a significant part. So it's allowed us to pull this together, help make it sustainable, and allow us to inspire young people from underrepresented backgrounds and help drive that push for diversity in the games industry. So we look forward to working more with them and other companies, other organizations that would like to also take part in the work that we're doing. So thank you to Rocksteady. Over on Twitch, we have our Studio 77 activities lineup. So this is our digital platform where we talk to different creative professionals and play games for your amusement. So we talk to people from industries like comics, video games, animation, and we do that across different shows. So we have our Studio 77 report show where Tazziii and I recap the latest My Matter announcements and event news in a live recording on Twitch. So come watch that, see how everything's made, and then we have an edited version that goes up on YouTube later on. So it's a good, I guess, fly in the wall type show. Just see us chat, put it together, and give some updates. We have casual conversations with comic creators, which is on the first Tuesday of each month or thereabouts. So each month I talk to a different comic creator about the craft of making comics. And the next episode will be episode 28 with Tazziii Bettin, who is an Italian creator that I met in Malta. So this will be a very international discussion, and that will be on 7:30 on the 4th of September, and will be available on Twitch VOD for 14 days after that. And then we also have our games night live stream. So towards the end of each month, we play a different game. Sometimes well, sometimes not so well, but it's always fun. So usually at the end of this month, but I think this one we're going to shift the dates around. So follow us on Twitch, follow us on socials to get the updates on when that will be and what we'll be playing. So you can catch that on our Twitch channel on VOD for 14 days after that initial stream ends. And if you're a young, aspiring creative professional or you know one, then you can check out the My Matter Showrunners Work Experience Program. So essentially, everything I've just mentioned is an opportunity for young people aged 16 and up to get involved with. So you can work with our team across comic production, events, and content creation. So you can email us showrunners@mymatter.com to find out more. But now you're all caught up with the My Matter universe, let's talk about some of the stories that we've been enjoying this week.
This is our chance to have a spoiler-free discussion of what everyone's playing, watching, or reading. So we'll start with our guest, Coco.
I have actually been watching an all-time classic, which is the original Naruto, and I am literally only watching I think I'm about 20 episodes in, and it's a very, very long anime, but I also feel like it's one that I started when I was younger, and it got me into anime, and then after some life events, I couldn't really finish it, so I'm kind of picking up where I left off, rewatching it because it was a while ago, and because of that, I've just really been enjoying the whole ninja vibe that's been going on. It's been really good to just watch everything progress. But that's been kind of after my job, after my 9 to 5, I come back and then Naruto.
Nice. Good old classic Naruto. I have a book. I'm going to start with a book. Court of Thorn and Roses. I've been listening to the audiobook on Spotify. And this has been recommended to me by so many people. So when I saw the audiobook was on Spotify, I was like, okay, I need to actually do this, and I need like a good fiction because I read so much non-fiction and it kind of gets tiring. So yeah, oh my God, is it a good book? It's like a fantasy romance novel.
Okay.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's like fairies and high fae and giant wolves, which is fun. I highly recommend it. And then I've been watching some Futurama, which I forgot how funny it was.
Is this the latest season?
No. I've started watching I started watching it from the beginning.
Oh, okay.
So I think I'm on like season 4 now or something. Because it's just one of those ones where I was like my friend was round and we needed something to like just put on, but I didn't want to like put on something that I was in the middle of watching, and I didn't want to start something new because we don't like have that time to like commit to watching a show with someone type thing. So I was like, let's watch Futurama. So it's one, obviously it doesn't matter if you miss it and stuff. Yeah, and I'm just like, I find myself just like laughing a lot. I'm like, oh yeah, this is actually really funny. And some of the just satire comedy they have in it. And then I've been watching Fairy Tale, but in a very specific way, not the new one. This is why I'm watching it from the beginning, just to prepare myself for when I dive into 100 Years. I've been watching it while I play Call of Duty, just on in the background in Japanese.
Oh.
But you're watching it in Japanese.
Yeah, I'm watching it in Japanese, but obviously I'm playing Call of Duty, so there's no way I can read the subtitles.
Yeah.
I thought it was just a good way to like remind myself of what I love about it, because yeah, it was just one of my top anime back in the day. I love Happy so much. And then also like good for, because I've just not been learning my Japanese recently. And I was like, oh no, I'll watch something that I know, so I don't like, I know what's happening, so I don't need to pay attention. And my theory is that it will just like subliminally go into my head.
Like one of those videos that you kind of watch in the background. I don't know if you've seen, but there's one where it's like a 1 hour video and it's just like Japanese phrases and then English phrases directly after them, where you can kind of poke Japanese in the non-conventional way, and it's just like a Japanese phrase and then an English phrase. You're just kind of hoping that it kind of sinks in the same way that might.
Yeah, essentially, because when I did start learning Japanese, like on Duolingo, I was like, I thought I'd be like, oh my God, this is so hard. Like, I've been watching anime for so long. If I haven't picked stuff up by now, I'm never gonna like pick it up. And then I was like, oh, hold on a minute. Kind of is. But then when I stop watching anything in Japanese and then I'm just doing Duolingo, it doesn't quite work. So I was like, let me just, listen to stuff. I'm very much a learn by. I'm a very good subliminal learner. So
I feel the same way. I'm also like learning Arabic at the same time, but and obviously the crossover is a bit random, but I've also learned Japanese just because I'm going on a holiday and I feel like I need the odd phrase to know, but I've also been watching anime for such a long time. Well, memory, man. It's got really bad memory.
yeah, I think it's just not being there. I bet like when you're there, it will start to make sense.
Yeah, I'll come back and let you know.
Yeah, I feel like language is one of those things that like when you're not in an environment where like you need it,
Yeah.
then it doesn't quite happen. But then if you expose yourself to it enough and then you're in that environment, it just sort of starts to fall into place.
I hope that happens.
That's my theory. Yeah. Good luck. Let me know how it goes. Anyway, Nigel, since this isn't a section about learning languages, what have you been reading, watching, or playing?
All my stuff is English, so I haven't been learning any language, which is bad because I'm in Germany as we record this and I should have learned more German. Anyway, we're not here to talk about languages. I have been watching a few things. So I finished Blue Lock, which I talked about on the last deep dive episode, and I wanted to acknowledge that I finished the first season, and also now I've finished it and I've got the whole, or at least the whole of this first series. I feel this is a really good anime, but similar to what I said last week, I don't know if it's just because I'm really into football and this is a football anime, but I was thinking about it. I think it's a really good anime because it is about the sport, but like anime does so well, it takes even a sport, whether you're interested in it or not, and finds the human story in it. So this is a story about I was going to say, is it tournament? It's part, I don't know, part tournament, part deathmatch, kind of Squid Games thing. But so the idea is that Japan wants to produce the best striker and compete at the World Cup and just put themselves on the map. So they bring together some really good strikers and put them through this intense kind of training camp called Blue Lock, and follow the protagonist who's like he's good, or at least when it starts he's good, but he's not necessarily the obvious best, and he comes with like self-doubt, not sure what his like main weapon is, all that kind of, you know, typical anime stuff. But along the way, it's about him it's about everyone improving, but him improving. It's about balancing the need to want to get better, to work with a team, but also to be the one that gets chosen. So there's this whole theme about like ego and being self-serving, but also in a team game, which is a really interesting discussion. But along the way, just about him getting better, which I really like. It's really that the idea of like, if you take it to being, I don't know, creative or an entrepreneur or someone just learning a skill, it's about like, yeah, looking at what other people are doing, how can you learn from them and always improving, and always wanting to take on the challenge, because the challenge is what's going to help you improve. And I really like that message in it. So, and it's similar to, or it reminded me of what is the Queen's Gambit, the Netflix show about the chess prodigy, where it's a game that, I mean, chess in itself, you know, if you look at it far enough, it's not a dynamic game. I mean, it is if you like understand what's going on and everything, but in terms of like physically, so it's like, how do you shoot something in terms of like filmmaking that where there's not a lot of movement, and they really hone in on the emotion in that show. And I feel Blue Lock does something similar. It hones in on the emotion of every play. There's an emotion tied to it, so really, yeah, it is really well done. I feel it's a good show. I don't think it's one that Tazziii would enjoy. I feel in terms of like sports shows, maybe it's too much football. I don't know, but I think it's really
Too
well.
much football.
Yeah, because it is very, very focused on the football, which again I appreciate, but I don't know how well that translates. It might be worth like you just watching and seeing if you're just immediately turned off, or if there's something in it. But that would be a good test.
I feel like that's the challenge with sports animes, is like that fine line. Yeah, because when it's done really well, it can make you kind of just want to like play that sport, even though
Yeah,
you're not into it, or make you really get into it. But because Haikyuu, I fell off because they just had like one match that was too long, and because I was like, I'm not in this for the volleyball.
right, okay.
It was like, I don't care about the spikes and stuff. Like, it dragged out so long. And same with, what's the basketball one?
There's a couple I know, the Slam Dunk, and then, which I haven't actually seen, but then there's also the one I really like, which is Kuroko's basketball.
Yeah, Kuroko's basketball. That done the same thing. I was really into it. And then it just got to like one bit where it was just like too much technical sports stuff, like dragged out. And it was like, okay, can we just get on with it? It's kind of the equivalent of like dragged out fight scenes, where I'm like, cool, we get it.
Let's move on.
They've been punching this person in the face, the same punch, for 3 episodes.
Interesting. Yeah, you won't like this then. But yeah, I think is well done, but is definitely dependent on interest in the sport, I feel. But I finished the whole first season, so looking forward to whenever they get to a second season. I forgot to mention this last week, but I also finished Andor during the break. So I won't talk too much about it, but I just wanted to mention that I felt weird watching this, because as I'm watching it, I'm like, this is a good show, but then also it never fully captivated me. And I don't know why, because I can acknowledge it's a good show, but I don't know if it's I compare it to The Mandalorian or contrast it with The Mandalorian in that I didn't really need to know anything about Star Wars to get and want to follow The Mandalorian. But I feel maybe this one requires more Star Wars knowledge, because there were some moments where I felt if I knew more about Star Wars and was more into the lore, that moment would hit more. But yeah, it's weird. It's good, but it just didn't captivate me as much as I thought it would have. Given the first couple of episodes, I was like, oh yeah, I can see this is gonna catch me, and I finished it, so it did to a certain extent, but not as much as I thought it would be. So that was interesting to experience. So that's two I finished. I started Zom 100 Bucket List of the Dead on Tazzii's recommendation.
Ooh.
So
What are you
started
thinking
there.
of it so far?
So I've only watched one episode so far, but I feel like I almost feel like that could just be that one episode just says the whole thing.
I feel like the first episode is genuinely such a well-made anime episode of just like everything. I don't know if you noticed like all the like how they use color and just the detail of so much of it.
Yeah, it's just like that. There's a whole message in that one episode. I mean, I'm interested to see where it goes from here, but that I don't. I'm trying to think of an anime where in just one episode, especially the opening episode, it just delivered a full message, and you could walk away with that message.
With that message,
yeah. So
I feel like it is one of those ones, that episode I could just watch that episode like.
Yeah, just every so often, and just remind you. So yeah, it is about the. I was going to say kid, but I think he's definitely younger than whatever age he is, younger than me. But so this guy, he's like just in this dead end job, and then I don't know, that's the premise, right? Is the premise?
Okay, in the name.
Cool. Yeah, all right, yeah, and then just everyone turns into zombies, and then but it's like instead of I've also don't think I've seen this, instead of like it being dark and gloomy, it's liberating because now he doesn't have to go back to his job, and that says a lot.
I love it because it's so much like the zombie apocalypse is actually the thing that was happening before the actual zombie apocalypse hits.
Yeah.
But just the imagery is just so good. I feel like you could actually watch that episode with no sound and still get the message.
Yeah, I can see that. Just the colors, use of colors, imagery, definitely, So it's like a fully formed message in one anime episode that should be studied. So I'll be watching that and looking forward to seeing where that goes from here. So that is what I have been enjoying. Those are the stories that we've been enjoying. And now let's get to our main story discussion. And today we're going to be talking about Coco with Coco. So this is the 2017 animated film produced by Pixar Animation Studios. It was directed by Lee Unkrich and produced by Darla K. Anderson from a screenplay written by Melina and Matthew Aldrich. The film stars the voices of Anthony Gonzalez, Gael Garcia Bernal, Benjamin Bratt, Aliyah Ubach, Renee Victor, Anna Ophelia Mugaria, and Edward James Olmos. So, spoiler alert, we are going to get into all the details of this story that we have time for. I will do a recap of the story, but first, let's get everyone's quick takes and general impressions, starting with Coco. Coco, what do you think about Coco? Coco?
Very good. Coco likes it. I had a very quick catch up and watched it again today just after work. And so cried 5 times. Music very good. After watching it, technically this is the second time I've seen it. Visuals really, really pretty. Oh my god. It's really, really good. Character design is really nice. Attention to detail, really good. There is a clip where Miguel, the main character, he is like holding a guitar and it's like zooming into like the bit where you tune it, which I think is just the head of the guitar. But you can kind of see his cheek in there and it manages to capture like the peach fuzz, the skin tone is like balanced perfectly, just all of that I was like, oh my god, I don't know if it's my screen. Maybe my screen's just really good. Because I don't remember seeing that the first time, but this time I was just like, oh my god. I don't know, it just looks really crisp. So, like, visually, it's amazing. And then I have another scene that I want to talk about. But I also want to know what everyone else thinks before I just kind of fangirl over.
Yeah, we'll get into it. Tazziii, what are your impressions of this story?
Wow, not as detailed as that, but yeah, I really liked the color. I really liked the music. I'm just not completely sold on the theming of the story in some points.
Mm.
I feel like it was lacking just a little something. I think it was a little too tame, a little too on the safe side. I don't
That's
know what
interesting.
it is, but I feel like, yeah. But it was a really, really fun story.
Fun but tame.
Yeah, I feel like it was. I feel like it just
Okay.
didn't really lean into itself, you know, like it was not being as bold as it could have been. I don't know what that is, but
Yeah,
that's
okay,
just
maybe
a sense, like gut feeling I got.
maybe we'll pull something out as we talk. So this is one of those rare occasions where I'd actually seen something that we're talking about in previously. So I watched Coco when it first came out, and I just remember feeling but yeah, I just remember feeling that feeling a lot for this this film. So when I rewatched it, just going through and then just clicking with it. So I really clicked with this film. I like what it had to say, and I feel like the theme in terms of like the cultural theme to it, I really appreciated because it felt different than most other Pixar. I feel like Pixar, a lot of their films just feel different from each other, but this just felt just culturally just different for obvious reasons. And the ending, which we'll get to, I really appreciated, and I really liked what it had to say about pursuing dreams and the family take on that. So I really enjoyed it. Definitely quite an emotional ride. So we'll get into see if we can dig out what that missing piece is. But I'll do the recap and then we'll get into it. So this is a story that takes us to the Mexican town of Santa Cecilia, where Imelda marries a man who eventually leaves her and their daughter Coco to pursue a music career. He never returns, leaving to Imelda banning music from her family. Decades later, Imelda's great-great-grandson Miguel lives with his family and a now very elderly Coco. Miguel secretly loves music and watches videos of the late musician Ernesto de la Cruz. On the Day of the Dead, Miguel breaks a photo frame and discovers the photo shows his great-great-grandfather, whose head has been torn from the photo, holding Ernesto's famous guitar. Miguel excitedly believes Ernesto is his relative and that he can play, but his grandmother destroys his guitar in response. Heartbroken, Miguel takes Ernesto's guitar for a local competition, and after strumming it, he becomes invisible to the living but can interact with his dead relatives. They bring him to the land of the dead, where he learns Imelda can't visit due to her missing photo. Miguel discovers he is cursed. He must receive a family blessing before sunrise or remain in the land of the dead forever. Imelda offers a blessing if he abandons music, but Miguel refuses, seeking Ernesto's blessing instead. So Miguel encounters Hector, a down-on-his-luck skeleton who once performed with Ernesto. Hector offers to bring Miguel to Ernesto in exchange for Miguel placing his photo on an radar so he can visit his daughter before she forgets him, which would cause him to fade from existence. Hector helps Miguel perform in a talent competition to win entry to Ernesto's mansion, but Miguel flees after being discovered by his family. So Miguel introduces himself to Ernesto eventually, but Hector appears and accuses Ernesto of stealing his songs. As the two argue, Miguel slowly pieces together the truth. Ernesto and Hector were once on the brink of fame until Hector tried to leave. Ernesto poisoned Hector and stole his guitar and songs to pass off as his own. To protect his legacy, Ernesto seizes Hector's photo and has Miguel and Hector thrown into a pit. There, Miguel realizes Hector is his actual great-great-grandfather and that Coco is Hector's daughter. After being rescued by his family, Miguel reveals the truth about Hector's death, and the family infiltrates Ernesto's concert to retrieve Hector's photo. Ernesto's crimes are exposed to the audience, who turn on him, and he is crushed by a falling bell, which mirrors his fate in real life. As the sun rises, Imelda and a fading Hector bless Miguel and return him to the living world. Back home, Miguel apologizes to his family and plays Remember Me on Hector's guitar, drawing Coco to sing along with him. She shares that she kept the torn piece of the photo with Hector's face, preserving his memory as well as his existence in the land of the dead. Miguel reconciles with his family, ending the ban on music. And 1 year later, Miguel shows his new baby sister the family of Ofrenda, now displaying photos of Hector and the recently deceased Coco. In the land of the dead, Hector joins Imelda, Coco, and their family for a visit to the living world, and Miguel performs a heartfelt song for his relatives, living and dead. The end. So, like I mentioned earlier, we're doing a sort of Pixar back-to-back. It wasn't in the original plan, but here we are. But what it does do is give us a chance to contrast, because as I was putting these notes together, it's interesting, this idea of the Pixar slump, because apparently this is a film that I imagine, all pun intended, was bringing Pixar back from the dead. So I came across an article. This was like 6 years ago. Yeah, 6 years ago. So in 2018, from The Guardian. So this is Peter Bradshaw from The Guardian, who said, and I quote, "I feared the worst from this movie's Mexican Day of the Dead trope, expecting a tiresome parade of sub-Halloween-y horror masks under a sombrero of cliches. Actually, it's an engaging and touching quest narrative with some great spectacle, sweet musical numbers, and on-point stuff about the permeability of national borders." So this is from an article which is titled Coco Review, Charmer That Could Bring Pixar Back from the Dead. And in our last episode, last deep dive, when we spoke about Inside Out, there was again this idea of bringing Pixar back from the dead. So I'm just wondering, when was this Pixar slump, and why does every film seem to bring it out of the slump? And if every film brings it out of the slump, was there a slump? Yeah, I don't know what you feel about this idea of Pixar being in a eternal slump, and whether this is a film that was part of the slump or brought them out of the slump.
Default to my previous comment.
Yeah.
Don't believe in slumps, but it's funny that, because when we spoke about it last time, I feel like Coco was categorized in the slump.
Sad.
Right.
And I hadn't watched it. Was that accurate? I don't know. I feel like I said I hadn't watched a few of them.
Yeah, you did say, yeah, I remember that. I can't remember when the slump started.
And if we're always in a slump, I just think people throw that word around willy-nilly. It's all a lie. There's no such thing as a slump. Just because you don't like a film doesn't make it a slump.
I mean, I will say this is a film that came off the back of The Good Dinosaur and Cars 3, neither of which I've seen, but I feel at the time this was written, that was the slump.
I mean, Cars 3 was like pumping out the sequels for something for an IP that just makes money on merch, right?
Yeah.
Does that even count?
They have Lightning McQueen Crocs now, so I think it works.
Yeah. I would say Cars 3 isn't actually a film, it's an advertisement. The Good Dinosaur, I never actually watched, though. I did see the trailer and it's like, oh, that looks cute.
Mm.
But I imagine if I watched it, I'd be like, what are they talking about? What is this slump that we're in?
It is, it's an interesting one. It's just funny seeing that, because we just spoke about it and seeing something from 6 years ago that spoke about the same thing. It's just, like you said last time, it's like, I feel, people could just have bad films or just films that did not resonate with whatever audience. But I don't know, I'm not sure if there is a slump or not. But it was interesting to see this film, like I said, with its cultural importance. So this was Pixar's 19th film, and it's first with a non-white protagonist, Lee Unkrich, who's the director and creator of the story, who is white, and put together this film. And I know I've spoken to like just creators who may be writing stories about cultures that they are not part of, and I know there's different perspectives on if that should be done or how it should be done. So it's interesting to note here. But the reception was really good because it opened in Mexico a month before it opened in the US and became one of the highest grossing films of all time there. In less than a month in theaters, it made over 827 million pesos, which is $43 million, and became the top grossing film of all time. In that market, The Avengers was the previous record holder. So I always feel like, yeah, it's nice to see like stories from different cultures do well, see in that culture outside of it as well, and kind of shows the value of. I mean, we talk about diversity a lot on this podcast, but also just like the brand, the value of it, just finding different stories to tell or different ways to tell the same story, and it's just nice to see. I don't even have a question of that. It's just nice to see that. But I don't know how you both felt about like the cultural side of it and what that brought to the story or to the experience of the story.
I thought it was pretty good. I think it was really interesting the fact that they had Coco out in 2017, and then soon after they had, oh my god, what was it called? The Magic House.
Oh, Encanto.
Encanto, yeah, which also had really
So
good
good.
music. Yeah, exactly. So maybe there's like a running theme there.
Yeah, I think for me, I love things that like highlight or celebrate other cultures, especially when it comes to things that then include music, because music that's like inspired by or brings out different. I love it because then I'm like I dive into like a whole. Ooh, this music's nice. Like and go down like a rabbit hole of trying to find like local artists from that place. But yeah, I've always been fascinated by the Day of the Dead because it's always seemed like such a bright, colorful celebration over like funerals.
Yeah.
And I have a real weird fascination with like the dead and
Morbid.
yeah, but it's not morbid to me. That's the
Yeah.
thing.
It's
Like
a
a fascination
celebration.
how we interact with the dead and with the passing of people. So I've always been like super interested in like the Day of the Dead. So I like that it was sort of brought out and
Yeah, I agree. I do think it's really interesting because I think for a while, if you haven't been exposed to it, then it's a very good way to introduce like
yeah.
that side of a culture. And also just kind of tying that back into music beforehand. They literally had a mariachi band, which is very like, okay, so what are like classic tropes? And then they kind of gave you all of them.
Yeah.
Which was really nice. But yeah, it's really good.
Yeah, and if you like overblown celebrations over death, you should go to Ghana sometime because they do that all the time. That's their thing.
Here we just I don't the way that we do death is just wrong, I think. Yeah, I'm a big believer of like life should be celebrated. Like obviously you need to mourn death, but I think it's weird.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, the other part of this, like the process of pulling this together, that I really enjoy hearing about, particularly with Pixar, because I imagine a lot of other studios do it, but see, Pixar have that Disney budget, so their research like involves taking the creative team and immersing them in the culture and environment of the story setting. So their creative team traveled all over Mexico, learned about the culture, the music, the food, the customs that would all feed into the story, which I really like. And I aspire to one day to be in that position where we make a story, take the creative team to wherever is relevant to that story, and really like pull out the authentic like aspects of the culture of the setting, wherever it is, and then feed that into the story. I feel that's a really good way, and I feel it's a good process regardless, but especially if you're not from that culture, to understand it as best you can and accurately portray it in your story. So that's cool. And in this story we get, yeah, you kind of you get that feeling, or I don't know, did you both get that feeling of like, I guess authenticity is the word, right? Did you feel like this was an accurate portrayal? I don't know if either of you have been to Mexico, but just from watching the story that was told, did you feel it was told in an authentic way?
I did. One thing that I thought was really authentic, again, not that I've traveled, but I do think it's a stereotype that came across. It was a really, really small scene. Again, the attention to detail. There was a conversation between the mum, sorry, not the mum, the grandmother, the one that was like really stern. She's like,
Yeah, yeah.
music.
She's running
Um,
the family.
yeah, that one. And the mariachi band guy who's getting his shoe shined, and
Yeah, yeah.
he like, gave
I
the
was
guitar
thinking of that. Yeah.
to Miguel. Yeah, and Miguel was like, "Oh my god!" And then he gives the guitar back. But I think a really small sound bite that came from that is when she took her sandal out to like hit him across the face. You could hear like a kind of like it's literally really, really short. It's like a bit of wind blowing as if it's like some kind of shootout. Like she's just like defended her son. I know, obviously, the guy being literally from a mariachi band is kind of like the pun of the joke, but just the fact that they managed to kind of slip that in there, I wish I could bring it up just so we could like hear it go over, because it is a really small detail. But yeah, I just think it, because of things like that, it is quite authentic. Obviously, we have Frida in there, which is like the equivalent, I don't know, of bringing One Direction or the Beatles to like the UK. So there are obviously stereotypes in there. I think it's good to have them just so that they're also telling of the time, the same way that like Shrek had a bunch of memes in it that we can say, oh yeah, that was definitely made around 2010. So I think it's good to have both good historic figures and like relevant to the time stuff, just so it kind of adds to nostalgia. But I do think it can hold itself. It can pull a lot of the stereotype chords, but there's a lot of little things like the slipper kind of coming out. And I'm like, oh no, it's a real weapon.
Yeah.
Like that kind of thing. It's good.
I love that whole sequence, just like the shoot, because that just felt real. And it's one of those things where that aspect of diversity is you get something different, but then also in seeing a different culture, you see the similarities. And like that felt familiar, like matriarch of the family taking a slipper, a shoe, and just like wielding that like a weapon. And then I think there's one bit at the end of that scene where she throws it at someone, and then he tells her, "Go get it, go get
Oh
it."
yeah. Throws it at the dog, I think. That's so funny.
That was perfect.
Hit the nail on the head.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, like, I just don't know, because I've never been to Mexico. I don't feel like I know enough Mexicans to have been exposed to enough, like, to know the difference between like a good representation and a non-good. But I do feel like it felt like it was. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes you can feel it, and I feel that because it did so well in Mexico. I mean, if it wasn't, that would have ended pretty quickly. But yeah, I can't even necessarily put words to it, but you can tell when something feels authentic, or at least like authentic, respectful in that way.
Yeah, like it's been taken care of. Because
Yeah.
I feel like, for me, like personally, I feel like people can tell stories about like cultures that they're not a part of, as long as they're doing it like authentically and respectfully. Like they're not just like, oh, this thing over here that I've never experienced, I'm going to tell a story. That they actually like do research and immerse themselves. And like, I don't think there's anything wrong with telling someone else's story, but it's just how you go about it is the thing, right?
Yeah.
The intent behind it.
I mean, to be fair, I do think that that's probably a lot of it can come from the delivery of the actors, because I found, obviously I cried 5 times. I will list them all to you shortly. No, I think it was literally because the delivery from both the actor that plays Miguel, I am buying into the fact that they are a young person. Like, I don't know if they are or they're not. I didn't actually check that. My bad.
Yeah,
But
they are.
yeah, and it's like, oh my god, I feel sad because their acting skills are so good and they're making me feel sad. And the same with the dad, was also really good at being like, I just want to see my baby. And I'm like, nice, accurate depiction. So it's very, it feels authentic, I think, because the actors have also paid so much detail into the delivery. So I'm just buying what they're selling essentially. And it worked with every character. There were twins that made me feel
the
like, oh yeah,
twins.
they are definitely twins. Like just all of them. The lady with the really prominent cheekbones that are like really round. I can't remember her name. She's so cute, but like she's only in it for a short period. They kind of go through the family. He's like, oh, who are you? Because I can only see your skeleton right now. And then it goes through the pictures like, oh, you're this person kind of thing. But you get to see them when they are searching for Miguel, and you can see so much of their personalities in those like 30 seconds, or if that, like 20 seconds that they're on screen where they're split up to search for Miguel. I think I paid attention to her specifically because she was like, hi, whereas the rest of them are like, Miguel, where are you, Miguel? And she's like, hi, have you seen a living boy? It's just, I don't know, the dynamic between all of them. It's very like, it's back and forth, but it's very yin yang. Like, it's very, ooh, this is like, I am involved. It caught my attention. It kept me there. Good delivery.
Okay.
Nice actor.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we can like talk about the story aspect as well. So that like took part when Miguel was in the land of the dead, and that whole journey to and through the land of the dead was interesting in that, again, I say like, you know, diversity brings differences, but then there's also similarities. So in terms of like the story structure, reminded of like Alice in Wonderland, just going through that hero's journey where they're going on, you know, a journey of self-discovery through some interesting, like fanciful, whimsical land, and like in a similar way to Alice's story that begins in the ordinary world. So we see her bored and daydreaming. We see Miguel in his ordinary world where he's dreaming of becoming a musician, even though like his family's like no music at all. And then we get the call to adventure. So like for Alice, it's that following the white rabbit down the rabbit hole. For Miguel, it's, you know, his decision to quote unquote borrow the guitar, which he believes is, you know, ancestral right at that point, to participate in a talent show, and then, you know, strumming it and wanting to take part and, you know, fulfill his dream. Out of interest, what did you think about up until that point? What did you think about Miguel, or feel about Miguel rather? Like what did he come across to you as when he decided to take the guitar, and did your view of him change at all by the end?
No.
He still stole. He's still a naughty boy.
Okay, so it's bad.
Oh,
that's what I was trying to.
No.
Oh, I didn't feel like he done, like, I don't know, to me I was like, oh, it's not that bad. He's just taking a guitar. He wasn't, I don't even see, he was
It got him
borrowing
cursed.
it. It did, but his thoughts of like, you know, it's a family heirloom anyway, and technically it was.
True.
I was like, yeah, well, no one's giving him a guitar. Like, it's not being
Go
used.
take it.
Correct. I will take things.
That's true. Yeah.
Even like his age, I didn't feel like that was like a super bad thing. I don't know why. Like, is that just me? Am I the bad
Yeah,
person?
you did. Okay,
Because
so
I
you're
didn't see any
pro
problem. I was like, yeah, well, you know, desperate times, desperate measures.
Agreed.
Someone literally just smashed his guitar
in his face.
in his face. Like, that was actually, like, if you think about it, that was actually a really traumatic experience.
Yeah.
That he just had. So yeah,
That was what I cried. Me
I was
getting
like,
him off
yeah.
my suit. Like, oh my god, you swine. This old lady, how dare.
Okay, that's interesting, because I was definitely, yeah, I guess I was like pro taking it, because I felt when his guitar was smashed in his face, that hurt me as well. And I was like, whoa,
Yeah.
that's like murder.
Yeah.
So at that point, like, do what you need to do. That's what I
Okay,
was
so
thinking.
I'm not the bad person.
Yeah, or we're
Or
both.
we're
but
collectively
yeah,
the bad
yeah.
person.
We believe in thievery. What?
For the right cause.
For the right cause.
I still don't believe that he was stealing it. He was borrowing it. I feel like he had all intentions to bring it back after the
Yeah.
competition,
Yeah.
until we find out that it is quite literally an heirloom that was already stolen. So did he
That's
really
true.
steal it, or did he just reclaim it?
But I do think that it's quite funny that like his great granddad, forgot how many generations, also did the same thing to, you know, the guy that was passing away in the afterlife who was getting forgotten, and he was like in a little hammock, and he's like, can I borrow your guitar? And he's like, no, what about the time you borrowed this and then this and then this? And I was like, so thievery also runs in the family, I do.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
I never got the chance to borrow it and take it back, so
I mean, to be fair, both of them have stolen from the dead, I think is the running theme here.
It's a family thing. It's a family
Yeah.
thing.
As long as they're dying, it's legal.
as long as they're dying or dead. What is the dead person going to do with a guitar anyway? It's already been like copied over to the other world, so
That's true.
spiritual.
I love how we're rationalizing this. We're just before we incriminate ourselves anymore. Let me.
Yeah, for legal reasons, don't arrest me.
Yeah. So yeah, we get him that call to adventure, and then you get that moment of meeting the mentor. So Miguel meets Hector, and takes him through the land of the dead, and then eventually in these stories they all find their way back to the ordinary world. So Alice decides she has to leave Wonderland and realizes it's all a dream. Miguel returns to the land of the living and has that newfound respect for his family and tradition. So yeah, it's just interesting to see how, different culture, different execution, but that story structure, that journey is is similar. So I appreciate that. Also, looking at I also always appreciate the different iterations of a story, because there's no story, or I imagine there's no story that just comes out perfectly each time. And I always feel this, particularly when watching Pixar films, for some reason, that when I'm watching it, it always seems so obvious. Like, obviously that's the next thing. That's the next thing that would happen. So sometimes it just like blows my mind to know that there was like a completely different version of the film, like watching Inside Out and realizing like the first one, there was no, I don't think there was no sadness, but sadness wasn't the main, or the secondary character. There was a completely other emotion, and there was a whole change there, and it changed the course of the film. So in earlier versions of Coco, there were different rules regarding how Miguel would get back to the land of the dead. So in one case, he physically had to run across the bridge. And in one version of the story, this is interesting, his family is cursed with singing when trying to speak, which was included as a technique to add music to a story where music is banned. And I feel like something like that's a whole different film. Like, can you imagine that if that stayed in? That's just a completely different film. So it's cool to see how just a completely different direction was available, and seeing them go with this one, which to me, again, often watching Pixar films, it just always feels like, yeah, that's just obvious, right? That's the only idea they had, because it just feels like it fits together so well. But yeah, I don't know how you feel about that. If everyone had been singing under this curse,
I would have loved that version of it.
Yeah, low-key. I also think that there's such a classic Disney thing that's always like, oh, why is everyone singing all the time?
Yeah.
So it could almost be like, oh, we should make a jab.
Yeah.
At the other team, per se. I think that would be quite funny.
Definitely. There's actually an episode of Once Upon a Time that has this kind of thing, where a wish is made upon a star, and then the next morning everyone wakes up and like people just can't talk normally, and they're like, why am I singing everything that I say?
Yeah, that it reminds me of the film. The Marvels, where they go to that singing planet.
The singing planet.
Yeah.
I love
and
the
then
singing planet. I want to watch a show on the singing planet.
When we were on the show, Dylan's show, the Popcorn Podcast, I think we were both saying, or at least I was saying, I can't remember what your views, that I felt they played that safe, because it didn't really, they could have stretched that and really gone, like, leaned into it, and they didn't. And I wonder, like, maybe this is an example of what you were saying, Tazziii, about them playing it too safe. And it makes me feel, or think about the Pixar method, because I saw a piece, it's not in my notes, but I remember seeing a piece about the contrast between like Pixar and Studio Ghibli. And Pixar and Pete Docter, who's creative director, or now creative director at Pixar, has like deep respect for Studio Ghibli, as you know, who doesn't. But the conversation was about their method of telling stories and making stories. So they're saying like, so Pixar, for example, will do focus groups. And we talked about Inside Out 2, where they brought in a group of young people to, make sure like Riley's story was staying relevant. Where Studio Ghibli, they don't do that. They're like, this is the story. And I'm sure internally they, there's always that iterative process, but they don't do focus groups. And I quite appreciate that, to be honest. But then I wonder if something like this, like the version they had with singing, like the curse of singing, is something that in a focus group will be like, I don't really get that. I'm not sure why. And then I don't know this. I'm just like speculating, but is that something that would have come out in a focus group? Maybe they sanded off a rough edge to have something that was maybe a bit safer. I just wonder what that process gives you versus if they didn't do focus groups and went with something else, maybe a bit less safe.
I also think though that it's like very different. I feel like the why for telling the stories is so different in the beginning that for Pixar the focus groups are probably more needed.
When you say that, the why
of like, why are we telling this story?
Right.
Because by the time you get to that point, I feel like I don't know what happens in either studio of picking a story to be made, but I imagine, considering the two different companies, that there is the process of them getting to the point of deciding like, we're telling this story is so different.
Yeah, I don't think it's not even the process of which story, it's how to tell. Once you've picked a story, it's how to tell that story and what stays in, what doesn't. That's why
well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. To me, it's probably like the why. What I'm saying is like where their why comes from is so important, because by the time they get to that stage of like because the choosing process of like, why are we telling this story, is so vastly different that they need the focus group more than like, because of that, the foundation of where it's coming from is different.
Yeah, I don't know myself, but I just wonder how it's different.
I got
you. Yeah.
I think I'm picking up what you're putting down. Like whether one is like, well, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. Whether one is like thinking about, like, Ghibli is thinking, right, I want to tell a story about this thing, and then a bunch of people are like, yeah, let's go. Whereas the other people are like, we need to think about that more.
Yeah, it's like, how much money are we going to make of this? Is this?
Oh, that's what you meant. The commercial aspects,
like, viable, like, so, and they're going to have like so many stories. Like, Pixar are going to have so many more stories that they're picking from, and like looking at a trend. So before it even gets to the process of like making it, whereas I think like Studio Ghibli, they're like, this is the story we're telling.
Yeah. No.
So just from the get go, the whole process is so wildly different.
Yeah. One is like, how many plushies can we make, and the other is like, if we made a plushie, that'd be lit. But before we get that, wouldn't it be cool if this person's face looked like completely different? Like they would have such a different, like their social media team on both sides. Like one is probably more linear, whereas the other one is just more like, let's get excited and create this thing, which is kind of the vibe I'm getting from Studio Ghibli. Like it's always like, oh, well, we have a theme park, so let's just put it in there. But that's like an afterthought. Like it's so much more focused on the, I'm not going to say quality because both are the same, but I mean in terms of like value, I feel like they're very different. But that is a good point, and that like never landed in my brain until you said it, and now I'm thinking about everything differently.
Yeah, no, for sure, because it's Disney, right? It's there's always that, like, everything is commercial, so but it's different levels. So like, Disney is like, what priority is that commercial, and it's got to be high up for Disney. Whereas like Studio Ghibli, I imagine it's, I use the word pure. It's a purer process in terms of like, what is the story, what is the message we want to say in the story, and carry that, and then the commercial aspects can come a bit later, because it's not like we're not seeing My Neighbor Totoro plushies and stuff like we're seeing that, but that's like, or at least the impression I get, and I think what you're saying, Taz, is I feel that comes after, with like, this is the story, this is the message, and then we can think about all that stuff, versus we need to think about that stuff and let that guide what we say.
Exactly. So yeah, because I feel like with Studio Ghibli, it's like we'll figure out how this thing that we are going to make works commercially, whereas Disney is like, how do we?
Yeah.
Let's
how,
make an
like,
Inside Out 3 right now.
yeah, they're like commercially. This is doing. If it's not going to do well commercially, then we don't do it. We do something else until we
Yeah.
can.
No, I feel that, and you know, obviously both work because
Yeah,
there are good
and
stories
there's
on.
space for both. It'd
There's
be
space for
silly
both,
if we
yeah.
had
Yeah, which I think is a good
everyone do the
thing.
same thing.
But I do like the Studio Ghibli of like this is what we want to say. I'm just going to say what we want to say. I do quite like that. So for Coco, what's interesting watching this, and so I don't know how you both feel, because obviously Pixar are not necessarily exclusively for kids, but you know, all ages. So everything, there's an aspect of like that young audience, that family audience. And I wonder about this film if there's, I mean, I feel there's enough in there for kids, but there's certain points, and especially like the themes. So we get this idea, or this scene, sorry, we get this scene where Miguel's grandmother destroys his guitar, and that's like the inciting incident. So that kicks off everything, because that leads Miguel to like, all right, I'm going to run away. I'm going to get this guitar, and then like he enters the land of the dead. And then you've got this series of events that are all about him wanting to like achieve his goal and going against, at least at the time, family wishes, and understanding where those wishes have come from and the history behind it. Yeah, and I was wondering, like, as an adult, that it resonated with me. Like I saw elements of like some of the young people that we work with who are like, you know, I want to do this thing, but my family doesn't recognize it as a serious thing, so I'm not going to do it. But for a younger viewer, what do you feel they get from Miguel's journey into the land of the dead as he's fighting for his dreams and uncovering that family trauma? That's the word I was looking for, that trauma. Like, yeah, what do you feel a young person would get from that?
It's okay to steal as long as it's
Yeah,
I'm joking.
stealing is justified in
Agreed. In unison, all together now.
yeah.
Stealing is okay from the dead. I think, if anything, I've definitely been in Miguel's place. It obviously isn't a guitar for me, but I think it was like choices at school. I was like, oh, I really want to do art because it's the only thing I'm good at. And then my mum's like, yeah, but it won't put food on the table. And now I'm like, haha, here is some food. And she's like, oh no. But it is true for like, again, like it is quite dated because maybe 2017 compared to 2024. Imagine me forgetting what year I'm in.
Haven't
like,
known what year I was in since like
I forget how old I am too.
2019.
Feel that, but like I do feel like that dates it a bit because I have a feeling that message won't be told again, because similar thing with the whole heritage scenario. Again, my mum's an Arab, and I know that that's going to be different, but the ideals are the same, because all you want is your kid to do well, and you want them to be able to feed themselves. So you think in your own mind, this is the only way that I know, because it's worked for generations, therefore we should continue down that route. But the Madrigals, the Magic House one that I keep referencing, I've already Encanto! That one. Again, similar to that one. And also the Red Panda. Seeing red? Turning red. I'm
seeing red is different
right now.
Yeah.
The Disney edition.
I've got you, don't worry.
Thanks. I'm glad you're paying attention. Like, out of those, I feel like obviously they all have the same value, which is need to keep child safe. Here is the only way I know how. And I feel like that's not going to change. But I do think that, you know, having the cultural similarities of being like, well, mother knows best, and again, that's seen in Tangled, and then it's just kind of how parenting works. So I have a feeling that we're going to see something further down the line that's going to be a very similar story to this, because you can't really go wrong with it, because enough people can identify with being like, I want to be an artist, and then someone be like, no. But obviously, as times change, so are people's views. So again, to the aspiring people listening, just do what you want, but in the least like cliche possible. I do think that if you like it's not even like, I think there's always going to be an angle to where you can succeed doing something that you enjoy, and I think that's something that they hit the nail on the head with for this, that didn't really kind of come into any of the others, which is like, I do music, and it brought back grandma's dementia's disappeared for like 5 minutes because music, kind of thing. So, obviously music alone, whether it has healing abilities or not, yeah, it's a good angle. I enjoyed watching it because it's like the thing that they despise the most is what they ended up enjoying at the end. So as a story, it was good, but also
the music thing makes sense though, because music evokes emotions, and music is actually known to lift, like alleviate, in some people, like can momentarily alleviate dementia, or not alleviate it, but
like bring back,
make them remember a certain point, or like put them in that moment because of how emotions work. So it wasn't like a completely like wild thing. Yeah.
They used science. I believed in them.
Something that came up when you said that is that I'm so looking forward to when we have stories that are like, you can't make money being an accountant. AI does that.
That's so unpredictable.
Like...
They could just take your job at any minute. Go into art. At least you control that.
Yeah, but I did forget the original question. I feel like I actually had an answer to it.
No, I was just saying that. What do you think like a younger audience would get from this? But what I'm hearing for you is that the idea of like, the parental disapproval, but then maybe going after that anyway, because we do get that. We get no music, and you're gonna be in the shoe business, and we get that scene early on where you're seeing like the family is just making shoes, and that's what we do. That works. We've done it for generations, and that's what you would do, and that's a very relatable thing for a young viewer.
Yeah, I'm wondering if young viewers would sort of like pick up on like just questioning their family traditions. I definitely feel like teenagers, especially with like some of the themes that are coming up like on social media and stuff that are to do with like breaking you literally just said it, and
cultural norms.
No, the one that when you pass down trauma through your family.
Generational trauma.
There we go. Yeah, like I feel like at least like the teenagers might pick up on like that messaging a bit more. But I don't know. It was just a very colourful story. So I feel like children would just enjoy the colour.
The colours, there's always that. Yeah, there's always that.
So I'd be very intrigued to actually talk to like maybe some like under 10s and get their like...
I mean, if they didn't cry, like, please question them, because I cried 5 times and it was the second time I've seen it. It doesn't make sense. Maybe it's because it's raining or something.
It's the atmosphere.
It's raining inside my house. Yeah. I don't know,
man. It is very colourful, and even when we go to the land of the dead, so when Miguel steals the guitar, in quotes, steals the guitar, and we see that, and Boaz
legally.
And defendably in a court of law. So like Tazziii was saying, like that celebration of death in this film, in a weird way, like Zom 100. So the thing that is usually negative and depressing, zombies, is actually a moment of like celebration for this character. In this film, the moment that is usually depressing, like death, we actually get transported to this very colourful, cheerful town that is populated by like decorated skeletons and these very colourful creatures that guide the souls of this deceased. And that was just so cool to see, just visually, and in terms of the world building. So we get like world building that's very much rooted in that Mexican culture, which I just appreciated. Just felt it, or to me, it felt just fresh. It felt something different. So it's this idea of it's all centered around the Day of the Dead, or Dia de los Muertos, which is not the same as eternity. And I like that mechanic, how it was played out in the film. So we get the skeletons beyond the grave exists there in that space as long as there is someone back on Earth who remembers them. I feel that's just a really meaningful mechanic, and it comes from this belief in an afterlife and the continuity of family connections beyond death, and it emphasizes the importance of remembering and honoring ancestors, which is a key aspect of Mexican culture. So it's that taking the cultural aspect of where the film's from and applying story logic around the death mechanic and being forgotten, because it's important to the way the film works. So we see things like Coco, you mentioned the guy in the hammock who gets forgotten, sadly, as as Hector is playing for him. But that trains us, the viewer, to know, okay, this is the worst that can happen. You will be forgotten. You are gone. That is it, and that's really sad. And that's what is at stake with Hector in him trying to get through. So it's played for laughs. There's moments where it's played for laughs, him trying to disguise himself to get through, but it's like a serious undertone to that. And I just really appreciate the way they've taken that cultural aspect, applied it to story logic, and make something that is meaningful.
I mean, the fact that it's like, you're gonna be forgotten, and then big song is Remember Me. I'm like, see what you did there.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
It is very good.
And it's such a because that's tough. Like you will be forgotten. That's I don't know, that just touches me. Like no one will remember you, and you will be forgotten. That's literal death. So I really connected with that. What's at stake in that film? But yeah, we get different aspects of Mexican culture. Like we see the family altars or the ofrendas. So that's where they have the photos of the deceased relatives. All takes place around the Day of Dead. We get the marigolds is an interesting one. So those petals from the bridge, and I believe those are the only flowers that are shown in the film because they have such significance. So it's those petals that form a bridge, and that allows spirits to cross over to the land of the living. So we see that as the way that Miguel travels between two worlds. And they're alebrijes, which are the spirit guides for Miguel's family. So we see those in different shapes and sizes, and they protect them in the land of the dead. So yeah, it's all cool. I don't know if there was any aspect of the culture that you particularly learned from this, something that you hadn't seen before. Tazziii, because you watched it for the first time. So was there anything in that was oh, I didn't know that. That's completely new to me.
I don't really. I mean, there's nothing that I was like, oh wow, I did I don't really think about that when I was watching it. I was just taking in the story.
Do you have any pets? I know that's a big question.
No, I don't have any pets of my own.
Ah,
I tend to look after pets rather than.
okay. Because I've got a cat, so in my head I was like, "Oh my god, my spirit animal! It makes so much sense now." And then I saw my cat. Every time I see him very differently. I'm like, "You might be orange cat right now with no brain, but that orange cat is the same as the goofy dog. There is definitely wings growing out of it." I think a funny comment that was on the bridge for the Land of the Dead when Miguel was talking to his family. He was like, "Oh, I never thought any of this was real," and they're like, "Yeah, it's real." And he was like, "Oh, I thought it was
it's a story."
Well, I was gonna say he says vitamins. Obviously, we say vitamins, but he's like, "I thought it was real, like vitamins." And they're like, "Dude, that's real too." What are you, stupid? So I think things like that are just really cute, but it really does politely blur the line as to whether you believe it or not. It's just well, because some people don't believe vitamins are real, so I feel like that's a nice touch as well. So it kind of is whether you believe in it or not, to some people they're more real than others, I think was the takeaway from that 2 sentences. I think it's quite a nice touch that it's just well, you can believe in this or you don't need to, but that's obviously it's teaching us about culture, so we're like, nice, I'm gonna go and take my iron supplements because I'm
just stock up.
Yeah, very quickly. That's just gonna encourage a bunch of kids to be like, "Oh no, they are real." That was my main takeaway.
I mean, that's a really good takeaway. There's a healthy takeaway. I did like the crossing the threshold and how that worked. It reminded me of Kubo and the Two Strings, where there's a mechanism for the dead to coming back to the land of the living for a temporary period. And again, just like that exposure to different cultures is just really cool. Really cool to see. I did also like the spirit animals as well. So yeah, then we get this story where a lot of the middle part, so that rising action in a story, so where Miguel enters the land of the dead and he meets Hector, and a lot of that is their interaction, because Hector can get, or says he can get Miguel to meet Ernesto, which is Miguel's goal, so he can get that blessing and still like be involved in music. So we see their relationship building, and it builds up to a twist. So a plot twist where we find out that Hector is Miguel's actual ancestor and Ernesto is a fraud. Although I feel he had like fraud energy, but yeah,
Big fraud energy.
yeah. So yeah, we find out that there's a whole kind of drama there, and it builds up to what happens a lot in Pixar films, very emotionally charged climax. So we get the surprise when Hector, Miguel, and Ernesto are in the same room and they're having that back and forth, and we get the flashbacks to see what actually happened. And then Ernesto just goes like full villain, locks them up, and then it's about like the final act is about them getting out of where they're locked up and then actually uncovering the truth and setting things right. So I'll start with like the plot twist. Like, what did you make of the reveal that Ernesto was the villain? And then we'll do that first, and then because I want to talk about that, like the ending. But that reveal that Ernesto is the villain, and then the point at which the story turned.
I saw that coming a mile off.
Yes. So yeah, did it? Even though you saw it coming, did it impact you in any way? Did it like emotionally impact you? I wonder.
I feel like I saw it coming so far that it didn't hit the heart. That wasn't the bit that hit the heartstrings. Though I think the reveal, when it's like revealed to the whole stadium, that bit definitely hit the heartstrings.
Okay.
And when the great grandma realizes that Hector, that she's still, I think there's one bit where she's like, you killed my one true love or something like that. And then he's like, one true love?
He's like, I don't know what I said.
Later on, they bring it back up. And it's like, yeah, that's what I heard, one true love. That bit pulled at my heartstrings. But I just I just saw it coming so far, like that. It was like I had time to slow down. You know, I'm just imagining if I was a car, I could just like see it so far ahead that I had time to like slow down. And
the bit for me that would have been the first telling sign if I was actively looking for it again, because I've seen it the second time. You know when? Sorry, small detail. When Michael is up in the room. Miguel is equivalent. When he's up in that room, good old Miguel. When he's up in the room that's like hidden away, he's got his little shrine, which is a giant fire hazard, and he's there with this TV screen. And he's got this like guitar, and he's like practicing all his like grins, and he's like practicing chords and stuff. And then he sees him say, "Seize your moment." I swear to you, because I was watching it the second time and I'm a lot more active, I was like, hold on. He definitely didn't say that in like an all-winning moment. He said that as like you should seize your, like it was evil.
Oh, okay.
Like a seize your
Sinister.
moment. Yeah, that's the word. He was 100% sinister. And I was like, oh wait, they really planted that seed very early on if you're like actively watching it. And also the theme is stealing from the dead again. Like, why did De La Cruz have to go and take all of his music and his songs? Like, guys,
there's a real stealing from the dead thing going on, isn't
what is that
about? I feel like though it becomes wrong if you are the person that killed them.
Oh yeah,
yes.
Well.
That's where the line is.
You can be a thief, but you can't be a murderer and a thief.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, they were all yelling at each other. You know, when he threw at the end, when De La Cruz threw Miguel off the side, And then he was like, "Oh my god, murderer!" And it's like, well, you're all kind of dead, so he's only
Yeah.
gonna like respawn at the bottom, right? Surely that's like in their current reality, that wouldn't be a bad thing. I'm not justifying this in any way. I'm just saying like it would have been a weird like they're not
Oh, no.
going too fourth wall-y with it, but they have got a lot of stealing.
I thought that bit where he pushes off there, like, no, I thought that if you die in the dead world, then you dead.
You die in real life. Oh wait. But you're already dead in real life. In there. Huh? What?
Yeah, I wonder. I don't know.
But
Yeah.
also, he was
Real
a living boy.
He was a living boy. Yeah,
Yeah,
He was
because
he was
they
a real
made a
boy.
point of it. Like he is a living boy. You can't
Yeah.
do that to a living boy.
Good point.
Skeleton.
They did actually make a point to highlight that.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. That's fair. They
Yeah.
did. It was like right there, and I was like, huh? Not reading the science.
Mm.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
Yeah. So yeah, I'll talk about like foreshadowing stuff beforehand. But yeah, they definitely like planted seeds of that reveal. But watching it a second time, it was cool to see how they did it. Because even from like the beginning, the photo having the head ripped off is just like that's a big gap to like, oh, there's something there. And then when you meet Hector, because typically in a film, within the first like definitely the first like 20 minutes or so, usually, and like nothing's 100% all the time, but you've usually seen all the major characters. So I remember thinking like once you see Hector, because he's introduced as like just like a side character kind of joke, but it comes at a moment where it's like, okay, he must be a major character because he comes in at this moment where you would introduce all the major characters by this point. So he's being introduced by this point. He's a major character, and then there's certain kind of things along the way. So I feel we get that, and then we go to the ending, the sort of emotional climax when Miguel does make it back, and now he's allowed to play music. He's got the blessing, and they've exposed the fraud, and he plays a song for Coco, which I just remember when I was gonna watch it the second time. I just remember thinking like I remember leaving the cinema and just feeling like just emotional and trying to remember what that was, and then I remembered just before we get there like, oh yeah, this bit, because that bit I felt that song, just the way it tied everything together and what it did for the character of Coco was like just really high emotional moment. Is like Coco, you said you cried, was it 5 times? I imagine that was like one of the moments.
Yeah, like an absolute baby. That was there was a couple of times where I was just like shed a single tear, and then I'm like, huh, why did I do that? And then at that one I was like, everything was everywhere. Stuff was coming out my nose. I was like, this is so sad. I know it's a cartoon and it's definitely, I don't know, something to do with the season, but like again, I think it's just
it's a
the
big
acting.
moment.
Yeah, but it was just so well delivered. I think if I hear people cry, I'm quite a big empath, so I will just cry immediately after as well. And I think that's what really sold it. And then also, he kept saying my name, so I'm just gonna be like, it's okay, kid.
I totally get the like hearing people crying, and I was thinking this the other day when I was watching an anime, and I think especially when it's a voice artist doing crying well, that it hits so much more than like live action acting crying, because how are you portraying crying so well and your voice acting? Like I can't see your actual face, and I am deeply affected by your cry. Like,
but you can see the
skill.
character's face that they're
Yeah, but that's not a real human face, and that's not the person who is voice acting is still portraying that level of emotion through just their voice.
Yeah.
And especially
as well.
Yeah, especially the one is if you close your eyes and you can feel it, like, because sometimes, and I feel like this was it when Miguel's singing the song to Coco, like, and I felt that, like, that made movements in my emotional body. Like,
no, I remember that. Yeah, that hit me as well. It was like just because it just meant so much, and they tied together. Like they brought the song around really well, because it started off like the "Remember Me" song. It started off as because it was first like upbeat kind of thing sung by Ernesto. But then between that first hearing and singing it to Coco, we've seen like what it means and where it's come from and the context that Hector used to sing it to Coco. It's just added all this meaning by the time you get there. And we've also seen Coco just be just silent and very, very elderly, bordering on dementia, which is, I guess, is the idea, because Hector has been forgotten because Coco's the one that's remembering him, and like her memory's failing. So again, those stakes, so we know what's at stake. So to like bring her back in that way, that not only the emotion of that part of the story, but then for the rest of the family doing it with music and them being like, oh, music did this, and just changing the whole dynamic of the family. I felt that moment just works on so many levels.
I think one thing about that scene though is, it's only whenever I see the upbeat version, because obviously if you've seen it a second time, then you'll know it's meant to be slower. It actually reminds me of a High School Musical scene where they're doing soaring, flying, and it's like really upbeat, and it's done by like the two siblings, and then it's redone later on. And in my head, I'm like, I can't take this seriously. But obviously, if it's not done by the original author or like songwriter, it's going to be misinterpreted, and that was like the whole point. But I still can't help but think like he's just like the Sharpay, just like, yeah, let's make it really upbeat. I don't know. It kind of took me out a little bit.
That's so funny.
Yeah, but also there's a bit of like a tie-in with the fact that when Dela Cruz was like, "Oh, I just, so many people have me on their frame death wall thing." That sounds terrifying.
A friend.
Frame
Their
A friender.
a friend there, yeah, one of those. He's like, "Oh, I am on like millions of these people because they are my world." Like, because I belong to the world kind of thing. And then obviously it's reversed to be like Hector saying, oh, well, it was only meant for her ears, which is because she is his world. And I was like, oh my God, that's so poetic.
Yeah.
So there's lots of like little things like that I think really tie in as to why it's such a good movie. I think, yeah, watching it a second time is definitely worth, but you don't need to watch it to enjoy it the first time, I think. It's just nice to see the second.
Yeah. It's one of those films. I mean, anything can benefit from like a multiple watches, but because it does the whole. Even though the plot twist wasn't necessarily the most groundbreaking one, but when you see it again, you see like, okay, cool, this and this and this, and then it leads up to there. I feel I need to get into the habit of rewatching things more. I don't do it enough. I just feel I got the opportunity this time, and just seeing it again and being like, okay, this is how they made it. So I have an appreciation for like where they did the foreshadowing in things and just how things tied together. I feel Pixar are very good storytellers. Maybe not everything is a hit, but just on the whole, very good storytellers. I mean, we've spoken about like just it being visually impressive. One of the things I did want to note is that, so I got this from, I think actually from Disney. One of the they threw out this like article about 7 different facts. So when you see anyone playing the guitar in Coco, they're actually playing the correct notes. So they use videos of musicians who had cameras attached to their guitars as a reference, and the animators were able to make the guitar playing in the movie authentic, which again, it's a level of detail just above and beyond kind of thing. So, but yeah, no, very very visually impressive film animation. And I feel the Land of the Dead, the setting, the culture just allowed them to push in that direction. And we get a lot of wide shots, especially when we first see the Land of the Dead, just like lots of wide shots and like multiple characters together. It's just very stimulating visually. So it's really impressive.
That's so clever though, or clever's the wrong word. It's just really refreshing, I think, that they've like animated that so accurately. Because I feel like, especially with like music in animation, is like I don't notice it personally because I am not so musically inclined as much as I projected onto my Amanda version of you there.
Set up
I would like
false
to be.
expectations.
Yeah. I have a lot of friends that are musicians and they'll notice stuff like that. And I guess like on some subtle level, my brain probably picks up on that stuff. But
Mine
yeah,
definitely doesn't. I had to read it.
it's just nice. It's nice to know
Yeah.
that they do that.
Well,
It's a nice touch.
yeah, I definitely picked up that the chords were correct, and I think it's really annoying that like a 5-year-old kid can fingerpick a guitar better than I can. I was just like, ah, damn it. That was the first thing in my head. I was like, I can identify chords, and then he just went off, and I
Okay.
was like, okay, pop off, sis. You do you. I was just sitting there like, oh damn.
That's impressive that you identified them. I
Yeah, I
absolutely
was
did not.
only for the because they did actually go out their way to do close-ups, because obviously they can get away with it, you know, on the TV thing when he was like, that's like his knowledge or his YouTube equivalent of learning like, how to play the guitar was literally through the screen watching De La Cruz play. So I was like, oh, that's interesting, because you know iPad kids exist today. Funny they're doing it in a fiery loft, but like in that thing, I just thought it was really interesting that like they didn't need to go over the details on the smaller screen, but then when they did play, they could have like had, I don't know, a wide angle or just something that could have like hidden that, but they didn't. They did really zoom in. I also think it gave them an excuse to show off the details again for the peach fuzz, just to go back to the original thing. He was like, I have a dimple on one side and no dimple on the other side, was like a big thing.
Dimple,
He
no
was
dimple, dimple, no dimple.
like,
That was so cute.
it was such an excuse for them to like really hone that, and I think that was quite like, I don't know, flavorful. That's a word to use. It was good. I enjoyed the fact that they did use that, but I do notice whenever it comes to, I feel like guitar and piano are nice ones to do, whereas violin, in like anything I've ever seen people animate for violin, no, they have like never gone anywhere near, because they don't have frets on the board. It's just like a piece of wood with string that goes on it, like metal string, and it hurts, and you just can't see it. They're just really fast, and they're kind of scary. They're the hardest like instruments to learn, in my opinion. But a guitar, I was like, oh, that's nice.
Yeah, I mean, again, musical detail was lost on me, but I appreciate like that is in there to that extent, especially for a film that music is such an important part of. And we've talked about the characters. I don't know if there was any that stood out to you. I mean, I did like, I really liked Hector, just because again it sort of represents that entrepreneur in there. It's like, I'm going to go after this thing, and then I'm going to make these sacrifices, but because like ultimately he wanted to return back to his family, and that was the thing that, you know, led Ernesto to kill him. But I don't know, just his spirit. I just liked his spirit in this film, and I felt really pleased that he got what he wanted in the end. I was happy for Miguel as well, but I was really pleased that Hector kind of got what he wanted, because it just felt, when he was introduced, like such a down on his luck character, that I was just like pleased that he achieved his goal. But I don't know if any other characters stood out to you both.
The dog. Actually,
Oh
the
yeah,
dog and the cat thing.
The cat bird thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Because there's a cat at the end which is like tiny, and I was like, ha, nice.
Yeah.
What you mean the giant terrifying thing?
I mean, they're the same character.
the same, yeah.
Yeah. Just, yeah, the dog's like interaction with everything, like the whole time, and then when he like gets his like colours, his little wings,
His
he's
wings.
just so excited. It's just so sweet. And then how like the relationship between the cat thing and the dog like develops to the when it's at the end and they like come to the human, like to the living world, how the cat then interacts. It's just so cute. I just
Yeah.
love it. That their
That is
whole
really
interaction.
cute.
I'd love to watch like a short.
Just those two.
Yeah, you know
I
how
should
they
add
do
it
their
in
like
again.
little short.
Yeah. You should get them to focus group that, see if that would be a
Yeah.
viable outlet for a story.
When the colours were coming up on the dog, it reminded me of, I'm sure it's a Pixar movie. Is it Ants? Where there's like a giant caterpillar that
No, the
believes is
other
going to
one
be
was Pixar.
Bug's
Bug's
Life.
Life.
Bug's
Yeah.
Life. It just reminded me of the scene where the caterpillar's like, I'm going to be a beautiful butterfly.
Oh,
and
yeah.
it's got his tiny wings. And I was like, the ratio of wing to dog is kind of like similar. Also, for the new with Deadpool and Wolverine. The dog gave me this similar vibe of it just being like overly licky. I can't really explain that any other way.
It had a I was going to say something about
I've not watched
what's
it
called
yet.
that, but the dog in Coco is very that tongue, like I don't know what extra effort I had to go into animating that.
Yeah, they had to add like extra frames just for this one character. My favorite character, I don't really think it's a favorite. I just think they've added like, I don't even think it's unnecessary detail. I just think it's really, I don't know if it's like a contrast of life and death or anything, but you know when there was like the competition, and then during the life, when the woman was like, if you don't got a guitar you can't play, and she was like really mundane, they really went hard on the day of like the actual dead people, because she had like pink hair that was like 2 foot tall, a giant like long sequins dress. It was so flamboyant, and I was like, oh, that makes sense for a talent show. And then I forgot that like this talent show is literally the same as the one that was in real life, and I was like, oh, maybe they're making a contrast because you can kind of do anything you want in the land of the dead. So, but then I thought, well, they really decided to like make it giant, because she was very kind of reminded me, or at least it hinted at, you know, those soul those Rio dancey ladies with like feathers everywhere.
Oh, like carnival.
Yeah, it was very
Yeah,
carnival.
like flamboyant.
Yeah, it was along those lines. I don't know if it was a nod to that, but that's the kind of vibe I got for like moments when they were introducing it, because they have like a build up of the whole like talent show. And then in my head I was like, oh my god, if that's gonna be the person hosting, I would be so nervous to perform. I already have like stage fright, but that just like, I don't know, she really sold her performance. Good on her. Whatever her name is, wherever she is, flamboyant announcer lady. Yeah, good stuff.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of characters that just emphasize that whole family dynamic as well. So I like seeing all the different members of the family. I think I can't remember who mentioned it. Someone mentioned it earlier about just seeing the dead versions, the alive versions, and how they interact with each other in the land of the dead. It's all right, so we've touched on some of the themes as well, because we have mentioned this is something that comes from it's of a different culture, but the themes are still very like poignant, very relatable. So we talked about the generational trauma, because that is a thing. So we see how something that happened like so long ago and didn't even directly affect most of the people living, can have such an effect on a family for generations. And just mad how that works. Someone decides long ago, we're not doing this thing, and everyone goes with it. We see a lot about like memory. So we talked about like the Remember Me song, this idea of like Coco forgetting just her father and what's at stake there, but just this whole thing about, if you're forgotten, if there's no one living that remembers you, then you're dead, and that is it. So this idea of like leaving a legacy, and that's what, Ernesto, to understand him a bit more, that's what he's afraid of, right? He wants to leave a legacy, wants to be remembered. It's so important to be remembered. So we see how far he will go to be remembered forever and ever, because that is a real death sentence, being forgotten. And then we see this conflict between respecting heritage. So Miguel initially rejecting his family, thinking that they are holding him back, and I guess they are in a way. But by the end, he comes round and he is all about family once he understands what his family, what Hector's gone through, and what it means again to be forgotten. But then there's this conflict with like going your own way. So we talked about, Tazziii was saying, one day it might be a case of that, don't be an accountant, can't trust that. Sometimes you have to go your own way. Sometimes your family might be saying one thing, and that might not be the right thing, even if it comes from a understandable or good place. So we see that Miguel is in him to play the guitar. He's an artist, but his urges are suppressed, and that's an aspect of the story that really resonate, because I see young people like, oh, I want to do this, but whoever, family, friends, whatever, just are telling me no, and it's such a shame. Actually, that's the word I'll use. It's such a shame to see it so often, but it's a reminder. Like Miguel's story is a reminder. It's like, just sometimes it's just whatever's in you, you have to do, and it won't just be forgotten. Like, to put a spin on the theme, it won't just be forgotten. Like, sometimes you have to do the thing that's in you. I remember a friend told me recently, it wasn't necessarily their phrase, but it's a phrase that's often said in some version, is like, you can't give up on the thing that keeps coming back to you. If you keep thinking about it, just you can't let it go, like, because there's no point. You're wasting time otherwise, because you keep thinking about it. I don't know if that makes sense to either of you. Like,
Yeah,
just
definitely. Absolutely. 100%.
yeah. And Miguel just can't, like, music, he can't drop it, so don't make him drop it. But yeah, was there a theme that spoke to you? I mean, that was the one that spoke to me the most, but was there a theme that spoke to either of you, like, in particular?
I think the biggest theme that stood out to me was that like generational trauma, and just how strong it was, because they didn't even really know why at that point. Like, it was just, this is how we do things. There's like no rhyme or reason. And then when you find out what actually happened, you're like, okay, so firstly, it's wild that this thing is like stopped so much with your family for just even having music in the house. Even the case of pursuing it, just hearing it. And then when you find out what's actually happened, it's like it didn't even go down like that. It's like a big misunderstanding.
Yeah, and it's impacted generations.
Yeah. So not only has this thing impacted generations, but also like it wasn't even a thing in the first place. And that really just like blew my mind. Not blew my mind, but
Makes you
was
think.
really impactful. And it made me think, exactly, it made me think like, how many things have happened in people's real lives? Like, because this isn't like a wild story. I know people who have like just this tradition or this like stubborn thing in their family that's like, we don't do
We
this,
do,
we just
yeah,
don't.
or we
And
do
it's like,
this and we don't
or
do
we do
anything else.
this, yeah. And it's like, why? And when you ask, it's just like, it is just this family thing. It's like, because so and so says, like, or even if it is that there's like a story that someone wronged them or whatever, they're like, yeah, this happened. And it's like, how many of those stories are only like one part of the story that you'll never know as well? So you're handing down this trauma, this thing that's causing more harm to people, and it's over like nothing. Like, the thing wasn't even there. And then the other thing that really stood out to me was like, because the great grandma is like, just take the blessing. Why, like, don't break it. Don't break your promise. That she was like, I'd rather you die in this way than just let you
Do music.
just let you do music. Like, why is it that big of a deal? Like, obviously, it's an emotional thing for her, but that much, really, like, that you'd. I was like, damn, you really. That's like really heavy trauma over like something.
But she thought he left her.
But even if he did, like, that much,
Yeah, I
that
guess so.
much. Yeah, that hit me. I was like, that, but that's how damaging like generational trauma can be. It's someone else's pain inflicted on,
like, externally on
yeah.
others, like, even as we were going through this film, it's like there's I can think of like real life examples in my family where it's like just stuff happens and it's such a shame. Like, that's the best word I can use for it. But it's just leaves an impression, and it happens, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's yeah. So the generational trauma thing really stood out to me.
What about you,
Yeah.
Coco?
I mean, to be fair, just as Tazzy was saying, I was thinking, wait, if you think about the amount of like plot holes that they have in terms of how time works, was that the first time that Imelda, the OG lady,
Yeah, great.
like, when was that the first time she's seen Hector since he's died? You know, because De La Cruz was like, "Hey, you know this guy? He's kind of sussy," but like, Imelda didn't say that to to him. Like, I don't know. He could have just explained it to her even when they died.
But I feel like there was one line, because I had that question, and there was one line where after the big cat rescues Hector and Miguel, where she was like, I've told you so many times I don't want you in life or death, something along
Oh,
those
yeah,
lines.
yeah.
So it
That's
kind of
it.
hinted as if they had come across each other, but
And she just
obviously
didn't want
she
no
was
part.
so hurt that
Yeah.
was like, I'm not even going to give you the opportunity to explain yourself, even in death. And I
Ah.
wonder if there's a scene that got cut there.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, if it doesn't, it sure as hell does fill in the blanks. But it's also like, well, there's so many of them up there. Surely he could have spoken to one of the twins or something and just been
The
like,
message
hey,
across.
I got
How do you
poisoned.
mean it? Yeah.
Yeah, like, mate, I choked on a chorizo. It wasn't my fault. Like, you know, if that was already a rumor in like the underground section, like surely that would have got out, maybe, or the policewoman or the security guard that was
But
But
like,
that still
oh,
protected that legacy.
yeah, but as
yeah,
well, like,
Probably
I
had
feel
skeleton
like,
lawyers. Cease
yeah,
and desist.
that's allergic to dogs.
I feel like as well, because he would have been dead for a while before she was. So even if you heard that rumor, oh, he choked on a
Yeah,
chorizo, like no one's gonna say what time he did.
yeah, like he only just figured out that he was poisoned. Maybe.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
that's
even
fine.
even because I was like, even if he had just choked on the chorizo, he still wouldn't. But the time, like obviously, the time between him dying and her dying was a
Yeah, yeah,
dramatic difference. So like people aren't going around with a rumor like you choked on a chorizo on this exact date. Like you're not
yeah,
gonna.
yeah.
It's not
And they're
gonna
not
be
going to do
brought up.
it like 20 years later either when Imelda ends up passing away. They're like, huh, did you know that your husband, or ex, I guess, passed
Yeah.
away because of sausage? She would have been like, what? And then
Yeah.
roll the credits because it's a kid's movie, but
Yeah.
Yeah. I
like,
also feel like the family wouldn't have talked to him because of how like
Yeah,
they wouldn't
he's cut.
even
yeah.
You're cut.
like talk to Miguel about that. Like when Miguel was like, "One of you," and they're like, "No, don't bring me into this."
Yeah.
I do like questions like that where it's like, how do you make a story? And once, because there would have been a point where it's like it was messy, and like you said, there's like plot holes and stuff, and then we've had to go back, add bits of dialogue, and rework things just to make it hang together in some ways. I always like hearing about like considerations in terms of stories at that level. But yeah, one last thing, just to circle back to this question, Tazziii, you were saying like you felt it was safe. What would you have liked to have seen being pushed out further? Or was there anything that
I still don't have an answer to that
Okay,
question.
I wasn't sure if we get to an answer by the end of this, but you just felt it could
But
have.
yeah, like yeah, I can't explain because it's like an instinctual thing
Mm,
that I didn't get the opportunity to like dig into. I feel like if I'd like had because I literally just watched it today, so I
mm.
didn't have a chance to watch it again before recording to like pick out what that is. But maybe in the future
Yeah, that'll be
I'll
interesting
rewatch
to
it and
know.
then just drop it in somewhere on the podcast.
The director's cut of this episode.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, yeah. Well, that's a tease for a future time and a future place to find out what it could have been. But yeah, I do feel it's like a sort of emotional journey, one that resonated in places, and yeah, I enjoyed the time. So that's our discussion on Coco. Let us know what you think of this story discussion. Were you impacted emotionally, or did you also feel? Do you know what that missing thing was? Let us know. Ask us on a postcard. Or sing them to us, whatever. So before we end this episode completely, I want to make sure that we get to this week's storytelling tip. And for this episode, I wanted to talk about using foreshadowing and misdirection on your way to some kind of plot twist, because like we talked about the twist here, it's something that is just cool to see, even if this one maybe was seen a bit ahead of time, but it's just cool to see like how it's put together in a story and how you can use foreshadowing, misdirection, which are both narrative tools for making those plot twists and how they can leave audiences shocked and deeply invested in the story, because they go to the like emotional impact of the story and can be used to reinforce the underlying themes. So you've got foreshadowing, which is the art of putting in subtle hints and clues throughout the story that suggest that future events. So it's things that should go unnoticed on the first watch, but then become apparent on reflection. It's about making the plot twist feel earned rather than arbitrary. Misdirection is like leading the audience to believe one thing while preparing them for a different outcome, and then those will lead to plot twists that are hopefully satisfying because they resonate with the audience on a deeper level. And it's all about a balancing act to get to the surprise, the thrill of the surprise, while also providing the comfort of hindsight. So it should all fit together when you're looking back. So it's a delicate balance, and misuse can lead to confusion or a sense of betrayal among the audience. But in Coco, I feel, even though it wasn't maybe the most surprising of surprises, I felt that it was well done to lead to the plot twist in a way that matched with the story's themes. Because as we follow Miguel's journey, we're led to believe that Ernesto de la Cruz is Miguel's great-great-grandfather. And that's reinforced along the way with different clues, such as the similarity between Miguel's passion for music and Ernesto's legendary status as a musician, or the discovery of what we believe at that time is Ernesto's guitar in family photos. But then the film misdirects the audience by gradually revealing that Ernesto is not the benevolent figure that he appears to be. Like we said, he's got big fraud energy. So that twist, that a seemingly minor character like Hector is actually Miguel's true ancestor, it just recontextualizes the whole story. So, and the film also avoids like common pitfalls when you're using misdirection. So it doesn't rely on like red herrings that feel arbitrary or misleading for the sake of confusion, but every clue that is in there, it serves the narrative and the themes of the story. So there's other good examples for those that have seen Fight Club. Some spoilers ahead, so if you want to miss those, cover your ears now. So in the film Fight Club, the twist that Tyler Durden and the protagonist are the same person is foreshadowed throughout the narrative. So we get subtle hints, and then it all builds up to the reveal. So the clues are there, but they're presented in a way that doesn't overtly draw attention towards them. Another amazing example in the series Mr. Robot, which just expertly uses foreshadowing and misdirection, and personally like the biggest like plot twist that I've ever experienced in a story, bar none. Just subtle clues are dropped along the way that reveal or like point to the true nature of Elliot's reality and the people around him. So the show's just so good at taking advantage of Elliot's perspective to just throw you off. Absolutely fantastic. And we get some bad ones as well. Star Wars, The Rise of the Skywalker, where we see that Emperor Palpatine is alive and Rey is his granddaughter. It just poorly foreshadowed, comes across as an attempt to retcon past storylines, like so apparent, and it just because it gives little or no hints about the connection in earlier films, just comes out now where it feels like a last minute addition rather than a well-planned reveal. So don't do that. But here are 4 tips to consider if you're thinking about using foreshadowing, misdirection, and plot twists in your story. So number 1 is understand your story's themes. So before implementing any foreshadowing or misdirection, really get to grips with your themes, have a good understanding of them, because that will allow you to craft plot twists that feel meaningful and resonate with the audience. And that's the main thing. Number 2 is use subtle clues. So foreshadowing should be subtle, yet clear enough to be recognized when you reflect back. So you can plant clues in dialogue, use symbols and actions, but then avoid making them too obvious. And that's the balance. That's the trick there. Number 3 is balance attention. So when foreshadowing, you want to draw just enough attention to the clues to make them noticeable without giving away the twist. So this balance keeps the audience engaged without ruining the surprise. And number 4 is make sure any twists serve the plot. So you only use these tools if they serve the story's plot and themes. And that's what we get in Coco, is it all leads towards the story's themes. So you want to avoid forcing twists that do not align with the narrative goals or the character motivation. So don't do it just for shock value, basically. So those are some things to think about. And that's a tip for this week's episode. If you're creating your own story, let us know what you think of the tip, especially if you're using it in that story. Get in touch with us in our Discord or send an email, studio77@mymatter.com, So that's the tip for this episode. Tazziii, let's check in with our guest.
So, Coco, is there any projects or any interesting news that you have that you want to share with us? And then also where everyone can find you online?
Yeah, I've got a couple of cosplays that are coming up. I will also be I'll be judging some competitions for cosplay in the future, which is a new thing to add to my bucket list and or CV for cosplay, which I'm really looking forward to doing, and that's all going to be done this year. Liverpool, Birmingham, that kind of thing. Just regular conventions that I go to. But you can find me online and my progress at calling me Coco on literally everything. I do most social media. So yeah, that's everything from me, I think.
Thank you so much. And yeah, thank you for joining us on the episode, the Coco episode.
Yeah, it's all
For
about
having
you,
me.
really.
All about Coco.
Yay! Thanks for having me.
No, thanks for joining. And if anyone is listening who has the same name as a title of a story, get in touch because we will put you on the show. But thank you for joining us. If you did enjoy this episode of Story X Story, make sure you subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss a future episode. And please do give us a 5-star rating and review because that helps us reach new listeners and fans of story discussions. So we're story creators and you can discover our manga universe online. We have got all our stories there, including Samurai Chef, Hot Lunch, Serious Soothe Fog, and soon to be the latest manga, Origins Against All Odds. So look out for that. We have our Do I Look Like a Gamer video game representation campaign, which you can still get involved with. We've done a bunch of events, but we've still got some to come and appearances as well. Go to looklikeagamer.com to see how you can get involved in the next event or potentially be part of next year's photo campaign, the 40 players and makers. So you can head to the campaign website to find out more. And as for the podcast, we release new episodes on Thursdays that include creator interviews, video game discussions, and deep dives into stories across pop culture. You can always get in touch with us directly. Our email address is studio77@myamatter.com, and our website with links to subscribe is myamatter.com/storyxstory. So thank you for tuning in, and until next time, stay safe, and remember this key bit of legal advice: if they're already dead, it's not stealing, but if you killed them, then it still is murder. Take care, everyone.